Since us quants and traders like fractals, let's do this. Sacred geometry holds the secrets of physical reality, space, time, and the human experience of these. Basically, how to manipulate physical reality, space, time, and the human experience. But you cannot understand sacred geometry by studying the shorthand for it. It's like trying to know the person by his shadow. What does that mean, know the person by his shadow? This is sacred geometry. So is this. This is all sacred geometry. This is sacred geometry. And they both mean exactly the same thing. They're talking about the same secrets of physical reality, space, time, and the human experience of these. Oh, wait, but there's 6 points here, and there's 5 points here. They're 6 and 5 aren't even related, except on the number string. There can't be any relation to this and this. They've got to be talking about different concepts. No, they're not. Well, they kind of are, but they're talking about the same thing. What do I mean? Physicists. Newtonian physics explains it this way. Potential energy is the energy in a body due to its position. This is location-based. This is physical. Now, while kinetic energy is the energy in a body due to its motion. Motion happens over time. This is 4-dimensional. This is 3-dimensional. Think about that. 4-dimensional, 3-dimensional. 5 points. 6 points. I don't get it. Let's go back to this. You cannot understand sacred geometry by studying the shorthand for it. It's like trying to know the person by his shadow. What do I mean by that? Okay, let's look at a person's shadow and see if you can... Actually, before I do that, I keep missing this point. Physics fact. A 3-dimensional world has 5 potential energies. Why? Any physicist and lots of mathematicians would know the answer to this. It's actually quite simple. Let's now go into why it's like trying to know a person by his shadow by studying shadows. Okay? So here's a bunch of shadows. Bunch of shadows. Who is this guy? Can you tell what is he like for breakfast? Does he have a mustache? How old is he? Can you tell by looking at a shadow? You can't, right? Because this is a 2-dimensional representation. It is shorthand. It's secret code. This is shorthand. This is secret code. This is shorthand. This is secret code. This is shorthand. This is secret code. You can't tell what the original person is, what the person's name is. You don't know anything about the reality by looking at a 2-dimensional version of the 3-dimensional being. You cannot understand sacred geometry by studying the shorthand for it. It's like trying to know the person by his shadow. So let's do the reverse now. See if we can know the shadow by the person. Let's look at another shadow. Who is this? This is obviously this guy, Alfred Hitchcock. How do you know that? It's because you know this guy first. That's why you know that this represents this. You know that he doesn't have a mustache. Well, you could kind of tell he wouldn't have a mustache here, but you see what I'm saying? 2-dimensional shorthand secret notes only point to the fuller picture, the full story. So what does this tell you about holding the secrets of physical reality, space, time, and the human experience of these, namely being able to predict or manipulate reality, space, time, and human experience? So since you can't actually know what the 3-dimensional version of this is, this 2-dimensional representation or shorthand is, I'm just going to let me give you a hint, another 2-dimensional hint. Here. This is this. This is this. Does that make sense? Let me show you. Let's look at the 2-dimensional shadow and see if you can actually start getting a hint. Are you starting to see how this could be this? Let me show you in better 2-dimensional analog. This is this. How? Oops. Jeez. Here. Like this. Oh, jeez. Okay. Ta-da. Now, that still leaves the problem of how this is this. Remember, potential energy and kinetic energy are part of the same dynamic, except one happens to describe its three-dimensionality and the other its four-dimensionality. So both of these are describing different parts or different dimensions of the same thing. Actually, different dimensions isn't right, but different aspects of the same concept. At this point, any physicist, most mathematicians, and just about every single civil engineer can tell you the relationship between the 5 elements and this 6-sided shape that's not actually 6-sided because now it's 3-dimensional and takes on a lot more meaning. So let's simplify this for you if it's still confusing. The fact that there are 2 pyramids, this is basically, except for I lost one of the spires up here, this is actually 2 4-sided pyramids intersecting with each other. What does that intersection mean? It means that there's no up and down. Okay, so basically they're 2 redundant pyramids. They're the same thing. So redundancy, let's get rid of the redundancy that represents that there's no up and down, because in space we know that there's no up and down. So let's do this one-handed. And now, can you see it? Can you see how this 4-sided shape would structurally have 5 potential energies? I'm going to leave that question unanswered because there's plenty of people that can answer that. But instead, let's go into the 5 elements now. Think of something that has 5, like your 5 senses. Okay, so if we go into 5 senses, this is where one of these pyramids landed apparently. If we go to the 5 senses, there are hearing, taste, touch, sight, smell. And the way DNA, the way fractals work is that if anything's got 5, it's got to have 5 subsets. So, does it? Hearing. Does hearing have 5 notes? Yes. Does taste have 5 tastes? Yes. Does touch have 5 tactile types? Yes. Does sight have 5 colors? Yes. Does smell have 5 olfactory flavors? Yes. Let's take taste, for instance. Sour, bitter, sweet, spicy, salty. So 5 within 5. Or actually 5 within 5 within 5. Then are there 5 types of sour flavors? Yes. Are there 5 types of bitterness? Yes. 5 types of sweets, 5 types of spices, and 5 types of salties. So 5 has to have the energy of 5. So you can actually tell and predict. And now you can interplay these things, kind of like rock, paper, scissors. If you've got a little too much of this, all you have to do is add this. If you've got too much of that, all you have to do is add this. Any chef can tell you that. Hearing. If you've got too much of one note, you use a different note to counterbalance that. Chords. Any musician can tell you that. This is how the 5 elements shows you how to manipulate physical reality, space-time, and the human experience of these. Here's an example of manipulating human experience of these, just with flavors. Just talk about taste here. Let's say, so this, the lung or the metal element, is actually spicy. So if you've got way too much spiciness on your palate, what ends up happening? It creates water. This is the water element. This is wood, fire, earth, metal, water, right? You end up having a watering mouth. So how do you destroy this? You go rock, paper, scissors. And if this is, well, it's not rock, paper, or scissors, but let's say this was, I don't know, rock. Then this would be paper. All you have to do is add bitterness to the spiciness, and it'll take the spiciness away. What most people try and do is add sweet by drinking, I don't know, apple juice or something. But if you add sweet to metal, you end up creating more metal. You end up creating more spiciness. This is also the color white. What ends up happening? How do you negate the color white? You add red. And photographers do it all the time with red light, don't they? To get rid of the light. Metal is also the emotion of sadness. It's also the emotion of crying and in depression. How do you get rid of it? Same exact way. Fire. Fire is the element of laughter and heat and happiness. So all you have to do to get rid of sadness is add happiness. It's not that difficult. Now, going back to trading, now you see why the color red is used in Asian stock market charts to show bullishness. Blue is actually the color of fear. Now you see why bearish candles are shown as blue. Okay, so we mentioned time. How does this impact time? Let's deal with that next.